Pyro is just WM1, it's easy. I've heard that line a lot of time over the years. And if we are only talking about how the first few minutes of learning Pyro is, then yeah, I get why it exists and I get why people say that. But that meme is just describing the Pyro skill floor, not the whole set of gameplay. If Pyro was just truly a WM1, then you wouldn't have one of the most skilled and expressive utility tools in TF2, and obviously good Pyros wouldn't look completely different from beginner's Pyro. So in that video I'm gonna try to break down why that label is just fucking lazy, what Pyro skill actually is, and why people just keep saying WM1 in the first place. Oh, and by the way, Heavy is also a WM1 class, and so is Soldier, so is Demo, so is Scout. Well, you get the idea. Most of the classes are WM1. So, why the WM1 name exists in the first place? It's fairly easy actually. Pyro is a beginner friendly class because it's close range and the flames are quite forgiving. So obviously Manta Pyro guidance basically says that Pyro excels in confined areas, and because of the flamethrowers having a wide spread, Pyro can focus more on outmaneuvering than precision aiming. So therefore you don't need some aim when you play Pyro. Yes, you don't. If a beginner walks into the perfect Pyro environment with some narrow space, yeah, definitely you don't need aim. But the mistake is kind of thinking that the easiest way to get value is the only way Pyro would get value. That's like basically calling a soldier just a left click, or Superman just spam, or Heavy just all WM1. That's the surface level description of the class, the entry point if you prefer. The real Pyro game is not just to press M1, it's to know how do I get into the range without dying. Pyro is strong in close range and weak at distance, unless you use flame, but overall in open areas, Pyro will not be necessarily the best class to go with if you know when he is coming. So even before we talk mechanics, Pyro has a built-in skill requirement, which is a fight selection. If you take fights in the wrong environment, you will feel useless as a Pyro. I cannot show it to you. And if you take fights in the right environment, you will feel oppressive and obnoxious for the enemy team. So that's not really a skill on its own, but it's just telling you and asking you which fight you should go for. The skill ceiling of Pyro can be defined by multiple layers, and depending on which layer you're at, you know more or less how to play Pyro in the first place. The first layer I will focus on is basically the flames not being what they look like usually. You see, TF2 flames damage isn't tied to the flame visual of the flamethrower. And by that I mean that the game uses flame particles hitbox that don't have necessarily the same visible model as the flame displayed during the fight. To explain that is, it's a fact that some flames are not necessarily visible when you fight an enemy. They also have a lot of speed and spread, and a lifetime. They rise upward over the time, and they will go forward in terms of velocity or decrease depending on your movement. So if two Pyros decide to hold M1 at the same amount of time and get different results, it's because a good flame would be about placing particles with the right angle and movement, keeping your target inside the particle stream long enough, and understanding how those particles drift and die. That's basically the first layer. And that's also why Pyro is not necessarily a no mechanic class, because that one is the basic of any proper Pyro. The second skill setting will be how your movement affects the flames. The movement is like basically a real skill factor for Pyro because the flame particle inherits some of your velocity. Your movement velocity will get added to those particles' inherent movement, which means that moving forward increases the range. Backpedaling while firing forward adds some negative velocity, so they go closer to you basically. The velocity will decay in that case. So the inhibited movement can catch up and the particle can stop and kinda like drift backward to some extent. What's interesting with that is the fact that it's a foundation behind the flame traps and some corner trails. That's not some magic, it's just some particle physics within TF2 rules. So when someone says that they die to a W+M1, what sometimes just happens is like they chase the Pyro through a corner and walk into particles, and wow, they die because they didn't thought it was a good idea to go away. One of the best arguments to also say that Pyro is not just a W+M1, it's like it's Airblast, honestly. If you want to win that, you just have to say that Pyro have an Airblast. And there's a lot of utility packed into that tool, and none of it is close to W+M1. The most important part about it is the fact that Airblast is all about timing. You don't get value by spamming it, you get value by using it at the correct moment with the correct angle for the correct purpose. When you use it, you can deny Uber's push, you can push Uber player away from the medic, or the opposite. You can also counter projectiles, you can counter a lot of things with Airblast, but you need to know how to use it, and when to use it, and against who to use it. For example, if you happen to fight a soldier, there is a very good chance that on your first encounter, he will try to fire a rocket at you, so it can be interesting to kinda pressure that and Airblast, so your Airblast will basically reflect what I call an instant rocket or an instant reflex, which is where you have the model, you have the rocket basically who is on the server, but it doesn't appear on any of the player model, and the soldier just get the entire damage of the reflect. And that's pretty nice, honestly. Now, the last skill setting we will separate a beginner Pyro who just hold M1 to an actual good Pyro is learning how to switch and fast switch your weapons for finishing. And it's really necessary to do that on Pyro. You can basically, or at least in my case I tend to do that, I start by igniting the enemy with my primary, and then I will just follow up with a Scorcher to stun lock and finish it off with the primary. That way I can do some crowd control on the enemy and stun lock him. And that type of combo can also be done with a flare, with a panic attack or whatever. Like, you have to learn how to combo because it's usually more efficient to do your combos than just holding M1, going into an enemy and die. Now, there's a comparison I always make when people just come and cry to me about Pyro just being W+M1. Heavy is also W+M1, but people tend to respect Heavy because you have more constraints and like they are at least more obvious, because the minigun like lower a lot your speed, So you have to take that into account, and a good heavy will play with corner, timing up your rev, framing lanes, target priority, and not getting caught out. But the Pyro have the same concept. There's just a simple input, which is hold fire, but the skill is everything around it. The heavy constraint is commitment and mobility while revved, but the Pyro constraint is range and approach. Plus, Shama comes for your blast utility. So if you hold W+M1, or like at least if hold M1 doesn't define heavy, it should not necessarily define Pyro either. And I also want to address that on the social side about like people calling out for W+M1 on these matters. A lot of those W+M1 is coping. When you lose a fight, your brain just go to protect your ego, and you will be like, oh, I died because he just hold M1 and that's it. And there's so many people who do that, honestly. Like, there is really a lot of them. Even when I combo them, or like I just kill them with a flare, I had some people who were just like, oh, you W+M1. No, I don't just W+M1, but I guess it's a way for you to cope about the fact that you died to a Pyro, and because you think Pyro is such an easy class, you can't accept the fact that you died to it, which is very sad in a way, but it is what it is. To conclude, I get why people can be mad about the Pyro. That class is very versatile, and it can be annoying to go against a very good Pyro because you will be able to somewhat pub stomp alone. But any class played by a very good player will be very annoying to face off. If you try to face off an insane sniper who headshot you out of nowhere, you will get mad because you can't really push a guy. He's in the back line, and if you try to jump him, he will most likely headshot you, and he's aware of your movement, so it will be annoying. For the Pyro, it's the same case, but because of the fact he have a dot mechanic and a crowd control mechanic with the Airblast, people tend to just hate on it for no reason. Yes, the class is super versatile, but at the end of the day, it's the player who will define what type of opponent you will have. And just writing about people being good on Pyro and using a W+M1 is kinda like a copium move. So anyway, that was Malatos. I hope you guys enjoyed that small video, and I will be curious. Let me know, what is your experience with the Pyro? What is your experience about facing off Pyros? Did you struggle? Did you have fun? Did you try to teach some people new tricks? And yeah, if you have any tricks on Pyro, I would love to hear them. Like, do you know how to flame trap? Do you know how to flare punch? Stuff like that. I would love to know all of that. Alright, it was Matos, and I'll see you in the next one.